The NFL is home to the greatest quarterbacks in the entire world, so in today's video, we are going to rank the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. So in order to create today's list, we had to take into account a bunch of different things. The number one thing that we took into account when talking about these quarterbacks is their legacy. What that means is how good are their stats, how good have they been for many years, and what is there to come. I also did take into account the statistics for each player, so I'm not going to be throwing out there a Caleb Williams or a Drake May because they haven't played a snap in the NFL. And last thing here, if you guys disagree with the list, you can let me know in the comment section below, but let's hop into 4 honorable mentions. The 4 honorable mentions I want to mention in this video are going to be Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, and Tua Tagovailoa. For Aaron Rodgers, I just haven't seen him play the past couple years, and when he was playing back in 2022, he wasn't playing at a very high level. If he does come back from this injury at a very high level, we're talking about a guy who has top 10 potential. Then there's Jared Goff. I seriously did consider putting him in at that number 10 slot, but I think there's some quarterbacks on this list who do deserve to be in the top 10 at this point in their career. That being said, if you do have Jared Goff in your top 10, I don't disagree. Those same principles also do apply to Jalen Hurts. He was very close to being in my top 10, but there was a couple of players who I thought were better than him. That being said, by the end of this year, Jalen Hurts is arguably going to be a top 10 quarterback again. I think that we can all predict him to have a pretty awesome year. And then lastly, there's Tua Tagovailoa. For him, the stats are incredible. The performance on the field seemingly is good until you realize that it is 90% the system that he is working in. Now, you can take that one of two ways. You can either take that positively or negatively. I think it's more of a positive, and I did consider him a top 10 quarterback, so it is hard to put him in here, but ultimately, the talent pool in the NFL is ridiculous. But let's hop into our top 10. Starting off at number 10, we're going to be talking about Brock Purdy. Now, I know Brock Purdy doesn't have the legacy of some of the players on this list, mainly like guys like Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff, but what I will say is that Brock Purdy through his young career has been nothing short of incredible. If you replace Brock Purdy with the body of CJ Stroud, we're talking about a guy who's in everyone's top 10. Now, I will give the critics of him some props here. Yes, this is a guy who's playing with the best offensive talent in the entire NFL. He's got Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, solid offensive line, great offensive mind head coach, and then an awesome defense. Yes, he has all that, but at the end of the day, he's still performing at an extremely high level. If you watched him throughout the playoffs, I thought he was performing just mediocre until he got to the Super Bowl, where I thought he put on an absolute clinic. For Brock Purdy, my expectations for him are at an all-time high. I do think that this is a make or break year for him, not in terms of him being a starting quarterback moving forward, but if he has an awesome season this year, he might have the chance to sway a lot of people's opinions on him. Through his short career, and might I mention he didn't play for the majority of his rookie season, but through his short 2-year career, he has a completion percentage of 68.7, 5,654 yards, 44 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions, and had he not got injured back in 2023, he might have been in the Super Bowl that year, but he made it to the Super Bowl last year and played pretty damn well in it. The future is bright for Brock Purdy, and I do think he's heading in the right direction. As of today, he's in my top 10, but if you do have somebody like Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, or somebody else over him, I don't necessarily disagree. Next up at number 9, we're going to be discussing Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. Now, he did not play much in 2022 nor 2021, but he had a massive breakout season in 2023. It did start off extremely slow as the first couple of weeks really did not go in his favor, but in that second half of last year, he absolutely shined bright. He finished the season off with 4,159 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And going up against Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, he absolutely killed that defense. We all know who Jordan Love is. I think we all respect and know what he's going to become in this league. You may consider this a bit of a projection on my part, and I won't necessarily disagree with you, but I think that half the season of what we saw last year was impressive enough, in my opinion, to put him in my top 10. Again, you're talking about guys beneath him, such as Jared Goff and Jalen Hurts and Aaron Rodgers and so on and so forth, who I think have way better legacies than Jordan Love. Obviously, they've been playing for many, many more years, but I personally believe that Jordan Love at this point and at this stage of his career is a better quarterback and will be a better quarterback moving forward. So similar to Brock Purdy, this is maybe a bit of a projection, and next year will kind of be a make or break year as to whether or not this is a valid take to have him in your top 10. But as of today, I do consider him a top 10 quarterback. Again, if you disagree and you think that Brock Purdy to whoever else should be in here, I don't necessarily disagree, but I think moving forward, we have to give Jordan Love the respect he deserves. He was playing like an MVP in the back half of last year. Next up at number 8, we're going to be discussing Justin Herbert of the LA Chargers, somebody who I think talent-wise is easily a top 5 quarterback quarterback, but unfortunately, it just has not really showed up on the field quite yet, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he hasn't played well. At the end of the day, he's had multiple 4,000-yard seasons, plenty of touchdowns, and very little interceptions. He has 17,000 to be exact passing yards, 114 touchdowns, and 42 interceptions, so by all means, he has the success play-wise, but it hasn't really led to much wins. And for me, I do value winning football games as a massive quarterback stat, and unfortunately, Justin Herbert just doesn't quite have that. Now, yes, he's been dealing with some of the worst coaches and has been dealing with some mediocre to mid rosters, but at the end of the day, it is the quarterback's responsibility to take the blame on his shoulders, so I'm putting that onto Justin Herbert here. Again, pure talent-wise, I don't think you can find 5 more quarterbacks that are more talented than Justin Herbert. But at the end of the day, until I actually see it on the field and until I see it actually lead to victories, I kind of feel like he's putting up some empty stats right now. With that all being said though, Jim Harbaugh is coming into town. He's going to put in a great offensive line. He's going to put some good schemes together, a good running scheme, and I'm excited to see how this could elevate Justin Herbert's career. Similar to Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, this, in my opinion, is a make or break year for him in the national media. If he goes out there and has a successful season and puts together a lot of wins and, maybe makes the playoffs or maybe just comes a tad bit short, I think he's going to get a lot more respect and will easily move up the top 10 list from 8th to probably top 5. Now, I think this is really where the top 10 list really begins. I don't think that you should put guys like Tua, Aaron Rodgers, or anyone I had in the honorable mentions over Justin Herbert. I think that this list from now on is pretty definitive. That doesn't mean that we can't have different players at different positions. I just think if you don't have these players that I'm going to talk about in your top 7, 8, or 9-ish, I think your list is a little weird. However, coming in at number 7, we're going to be discussing CJ Stroud. Similar to some of the quarterbacks I talked about earlier, this is a tad bit of like a projection on my end, but I think this is a pretty fair and a pretty easy projection to make. In CJ Stroud's rookie season, he had 4,108 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And while those stats may not blow you away, it should blow you away when you take into the fact that he was a 21-year-old rookie doing all of that. CJ Stroud absolutely put on a clinic last year. When you put on the tape, when you watch the film, I think it gets that much better. The way he diagnoses defenses and throws accurate passes is something that I think a 10-year veteran often does. Stroud, in fact, looked like a veteran throughout the season and led a fairly good, I don't want to say it was a bad Texans team, but it wasn't a great Texans team, into the playoffs and beat the Browns. And maybe a couple plays go their way, who knows, maybe they could have been more competitive with the Baltimore Ravens. Now heading into year 2, I think CJ Stroud has a lot of media attention and a lot of high expectations for him and his team. If CJ Stroud is able to match the expectations and basically match what he did last year into next year, I think he's easily a top 10 quarterback. Yes, he doesn't have the legacy of Aaron Rodgers or Jared Goff, but in my opinion, he showed me what I needed to see to put him in front of those guys as of today. That's not to say that Aaron Rodgers isn't an all-time better quarterback than CJ Stroud, because it's not even a comparison, but I think as of today, I would rather have CJ Stroud over a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Jared Goff. But next up, let's go ahead and talk about Dak Prescott at number 6, one of the more controversial players in the NFL for, in my opinion, absolutely no reason. Ever since Dak Prescott has joined the NFL back in 2016, he has been nothing short of impressive to me, and I truly do believe that he is playing some of his best football these past couple seasons. In Dak Prescott's career, he has a completion percentage of 67%, 29,459 passing yards, 202 touchdowns, and 74 interceptions. And while yes, you can put a lot of the playoff blame on Dak Prescott, I don't think that we should minimize the success he does have in the regular season. Playoffs be damned, I think that Dak Prescott is easily a top 10 quarterback. I'm not saying I would rather have him over Justin Herbert, because again, I think Herbert is a more talented quarterback than Dak Prescott. Same thing can also potentially be said about Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, but I think as of today, Dak is a better quarterback. Now, next year, we will definitely see if that's the case. At the end of the day, the Dallas Cowboys have done damn near nothing to surround Dak Prescott with any sort of weapons, so the pressure is going to be on him to make plays. And with the potential of CeeDee Lamb potentially holding out into the regular season, because as of when I'm making this video, no contract has been spent, the pressure is even more so on Dak Prescott. The offensive line took a step back, the running backs room took a step back, the receiving cores should be the same if CD does come back, and the defense is maybe better, it's hard to tell. So a lot of the pressure is going to be on Dak Prescott, and I do think that he will be able to play up to the expectations. Now, I want to make this very clear, there is a legitimate chance that Dak Prescott puts together an awesome season, but still manages to fall on my list, and that's just simply because I view guys like Jordan Love and CJ Stroud as ultra talented players that could easily surpass Dak Prescott. But until I see that with my own eyes, I gotta put Dak Prescott number 6 on my list, just outside of my top 5. But with that all being said, let's now enter into our top 5. At number 5, I have Matthew Stafford of the LA Rams. Now, similar to Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford has been playing football for quite some time and has been playing at an extremely high level throughout many portions of his career. But I do think these past couple years with the LA Rams has absolutely elevated him up into being, in my opinion, a top 5 quarterback. He's been playing since 2009, which is ridiculous to think about. I was literally 7 years old when he was drafted. And through his long career, he has 56,047 passing yards, 357 touchdowns, and 180 interceptions. And I just really think that Matthew Stafford is the pinnacle of what football should be played like. He reads defenses at a high level. He's not afraid to take risks. He can make any throw on the field, and man, does that dude throw a pretty pass. Now, injuries have sort of started to derail his past 2 seasons, but when he does play at his highest level, this is a quarterback who, in my opinion, is easily top 5. Now, when it comes to talent, I don't think there's much talent that needs to be talked about with Matthew Stafford. He is, in my opinion, one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever come out of college, and I think he has basically surpassed all of our expectations from him. With that being said, though, he is a 36-year-old quarterback who is at this stage of his career probably going to start deteriorating even more, so I would not be shocked if at the end of this season, Matthew Stafford is no longer in my top 10, but as of today, I would rather have Matthew Stafford for 1 season over the likes of Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, and Jordan Love. That's not to say that those guys aren't more talented or aren't guys who I'd rather have for the future, but if I had to start a quarterback tier today, I'd probably have Stafford over them. Stafford is one of the few quarterbacks who has proven to be able to win a championship, and I trust that a whole heck of a lot. Next up at number 4, we're going to be talking about Joe Burrow. Now, for Joe Burrow, I do kind of believe this is a make or break year when it comes down to the injury bug. Throughout his short 4-year career, he's only really had 2 years of consistent health. In his rookie season, he obviously had the leg injury, and then in 2023, he just suffered a variety of injuries. But when Joe Burrow is playing at his peak level, we obviously know what type of player he is. In 2021, he had 4,600 passing yards, 34 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. And in 2022, he had 4,400 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. This is a quarterback who I do think is up there with the Strouds and the Loves when it comes down to the talent category, and I do think Burrow is one of those quarterbacks who has proven that he can make it to a Super Bowl and potentially win one. The question for Joe Burrow is always going to come down to health, and if he's healthy, I think he's easily the 4th best quarterback in the league, but I think when hurt, it's really hard to say what he's going to be. Like I said earlier, I do think for injury's sake of Joe Burrow, this is a make or break year for him because we all want to see a healthy version of him. Next up at number 3, we'll talk about Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens, the 2-time MVP, and in my opinion, one of the most talented quarterbacks that we've ever seen in the league. His passing statistics through his short career aren't necessarily the most impressive, but when you put everything together, you get one of the best quarterbacks and one of the most dynamic quarterbacks we have ever seen. The only real criticism that you can have upon Lamar Jackson is the same criticism that you can have upon Dak Prescott. It is the fact that he can do these incredible things in the regular season where he can get in MVP conversations and play like an awesome player until it comes down to the playoffs. But I do think this year he did kind of settle a lot of those questions down. I know they still lost in the playoffs to the Kansas City Chiefs, and in some ways it was Lamar's fault, but I think in a lot of other ways it wasn't his fault. I think that he played fantastic through a big portion of the season, and I thought he played fine against the Chiefs. It just so happens to be that the Kansas City Chiefs are like everyone's kryptonite because it's Patrick Mahomes and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. They're a good team. So I don't really have a hard time saying that I don't think Lamar is a playoff choker. I think that he just ran into a really good team. As for Lamar Jackson, I don't really think he has much to prove outside of just succeeding in the playoffs. Similar to Dak Prescott, I just need to see him maybe win like one legitimately awesome conference championship game to really solidify him as an all-time great. Coming in at number 2, we have Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Now, I know Josh Allen has been notorious for throwing a ton of interceptions, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like he hasn't. But I also will sit here and tell you guys that that statistic and those beliefs of him being an interception thrower are completely overplayed at this point. Yes, he threw 18 interceptions last year, but he was also awesome for like 90% of the season. And I think those interception numbers are maybe a tad bit overblown because in reality, he only has 78 interceptions through his short career. And when you compare that to the likes of like Patrick Mahomes, it doesn't look that bad, to be honest with you. Josh Allen is a gunslinger. He's somebody who's going to run around, throw the football all across the yard, and make a ton of plays with his legs. He is an ultra athletic freak that reminds me in so many ways of a combination of guys like Big Ben and Drew Brees. Josh Allen to me is, in my opinion, the most fun quarterback outside of Lamar Jackson to watch, and I think just pure talent-wise, he is maybe the second most talented quarterback in the entire NFL. And I do think that this is going to be an awesome year for him to be able to kind of showcase his abilities. The Buffalo Bills on paper got worse, but in reality, I think they actually got better offensively speaking, because now he has a full trio of wide receivers with guys like Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, and Khalil Shakir. That's going to allow Josh Allen to absolutely flourish with 3 receivers that all kind of specialize in their own unique things. So instead of seeing Stefon Diggs complain for the ball every freaking second, now he can potentially throw the ball all across the field to a number of different guys. So I'm just saying, if you're playing fantasy football, you might want to target Josh Allen in the second round. But of course, number 1, it's Patrick Mahomes. I don't really feel like I have to say much about this, but I'll at least pretend like you guys don't know who he is. In case you don't know, Patrick Mahomes has been in the NFL since 2017, is a 3-time Super Bowl champion, has put together 219 passing yards and only 63 interceptions and 28,424 passing yards. Oh, and he did all that without even playing in his rookie season. He's won MVPs, he's already being compared to Tom Brady, and I think it's a legitimately fair comparison. And his worst season statistically in the NFL was last year, where he had 4,100 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions, and he still won a championship. So yeah, there isn't really anyone on this list that really compares to Patrick Mahomes. Like, I think it is a drastic drop-off between Patrick Mahomes to Josh Allen / Lamar Jackson. In my opinion, he is in a tier by himself, and he is the best player in the entire NFL, and seemingly will be so the next couple of seasons. But alright, that concludes my top 10. This is of course before the season starts, so by the time the season ends, or by the time we're midway through the season, this top 10 list is not going to be anywhere near as accurate as it will be at that point. So if you guys want me to make a second part of this midway through the season or after the season, hit the like and subscribe button. But I love you guys. Peace.